Welcome aboard Just Jets with your captain, Matt O'Leary. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hey, what's going on? I am Matt O'Leary, back with episode number 11 of Just Jets. Boy, is this thing flying by. I love doing these podcasts. I really hope you guys like watching these or listening to these wherever you consume them as much as I like producing them, because it's like me going back to my roots. It's more radio feel, a little bit more live, not so much cutting and editing that I do in the regular videos. Not that I do a whole ton of crazy edits or anything like that. It's all pretty simple stuff in the shorter form videos, but in longer form I get to kind of just sit back, relax, and talk some football with you, man. It's a lot of fun. So hopefully, like I said, you enjoy doing it. Like I'm Matt O'Leary. If this is your first time tuning in, you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Also, just wanted to do a couple of house cleaning things before we get into this draft heavy episode. We are going to be grading the New York Jets draft of 2020 and Joe Douglas's first draft as an NFL GM. I think he did a pretty good job. We're going to get into that and oh so much more. But first, I wanted to talk about some new merch that I put out. Yes, I do have merch. If you don't know, we have a few draft things that we could talk about. For example, the Mount Becton shirt. That's his nickname. If you like the shirt, you can pick one up. Link in bio. And then in Joe We Trust, because that is the key thing for this episode, is how much I trust Joe Douglas. And it's rare that I come out of a draft this happy. And that's what I wanted to get into to start this show. In the monologue, before I answer your calls and questions, the New York Jets started on day one, Thursday night, by filling an extremely important need in drafting a left tackle. Now, I know a lot of the comments and a lot of people, not just commenters, really wanted the New York Jets to take a wide receiver. Where they were picking at 11, no wide receiver was taken. But with how the board broke, the New York Jets had an option between two offensive linemen. The Giants shook things up at 4. That's when the draft really started. We knew Joe Burrow was going 1, Chase Young was going 2, and we knew 3rd overall it was going to be Jeff Okudah. From there is where the draft got interesting. The Giants could have went Isaiah Simmons or they could have went offensive line. If they did go offensive line, I assumed it'd be Jedrick Wills. It was not. They went Andrew Thomas. I like that pick a lot. That is going to be someone you plug in on the left side and you forget about. Nate Solder, you can move him to the right side or get him the heck out of town. Then there was more surprise as Isaiah Simmons began to fall, and where the Cardinals were picking at 8th overall, you assumed, okay, they are going to take an offensive lineman here, someone who could play on the right side because they just signed their left tackle. So that would make sense for Wirfs. It would make sense for Wills. Instead, they decided to go Isaiah Simmons. And I don't necessarily blame them. He kind of fell in their lap. I was just shocked because at this point, with Jacksonville on the clock, there were 3 offensive linemen available. So even if it didn't, but if Jacksonville took somebody at 9, if Cleveland took someone at 10, the Jets would have someone no matter what at 11. And there were rumors earlier in the day and earlier in the week that there would not be any offensive linemen available for the Jets at 11 and that they might have to move up. I wasn't buying that for a second. I really wasn't. I thought there would be 2, maybe 3 offensive linemen go in the top 10. It ended up being 2. So C.J. Henderson was the pick for Jacksonville, and Cleveland goes to the board, and they take Jedrick Wills. And I don't blame them for a second. That, to me, is the best offensive lineman in this class. I was hoping he would fall to the Jets. That would have been stupendous. But they are sitting there with not 1 but 2 offensive linemen to choose from. Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton. Now, if you watch the stream, and shout out to Ryan from Jets Talk 24/7, we were on there all weekend long. Me, Green Bean, Gangrene David, and Ryan from Jets Talk 24/7 streamed the entire draft, so hopefully you were able to tune in. It was an absolute blast, and thanks so much for him for putting it together, doing all the tech stuff. We couldn't do it without him, so genuinely appreciated. And most of us on the panel, we were saying we think it's going to be Tristan Wirfs because that would be the safe pick. If Mike Maccagnan was drafting, that's what the pick would have been. And I'm not saying that it's the wrong one. I like Tristan Wirfs a lot, and I was leaning towards Tristan Wirfs. But the days of the risk-free drafts are over. He would have took Tristan Wirfs. Heck, he might have even went Jerry Jeudy in that spot, the real best player available. Instead, they go Mekhi Becton. And I was a little bit surprised because to me, he has the lowest floor of those guys because of his size. He is a mammoth of a human being. 6'7", 364 pounds. We know the whole deal. But his playing weight, he likes to be around 350. He's expected to lose that weight. And they really, really like his size. And his ceiling is very, very, very high. Like I said, you can't teach that size. And they expect him to come in and just maul people. And I trust Joe Douglas when it comes to evaluating offensive linemen. He's a former offensive lineman himself, and he comes from two organizations who have great talent evaluators in the Eagles and the Ravens. The Ravens had a phenomenal draft this year. Eagles maybe not so much, but you can't deny the success that they've had in the past. And as risky as Becton may be, I understand the risk. I really like the potential. That's where you sell me if you're Joe Douglas. And if Joe Douglas buys in and he can see the potential from Mekhi Becton, I'm buying into, and I love that pick on day one. The magic really started on day two, though. So after the first round, there were still some big name receivers on the board that were left. T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, who everybody loved. You had Laviska Shenault still on the board, Denzel Mims, wink, wink. And some other, guys that, Chase Claypool and the second rounders. But there was still talent. There was still talent on the board. We were scared because the first pick, T. Higgins, gone off the board from the Bengals. Then Michael Pittman was taken next off the board, gone. At that point, I thought, oh man, are we going to have to move up in order to get our wide receiver? Chase Claypool was the next wide receiver off the board from the Steelers. And I said, okay, at least that's not... I didn't want to go with Chase Claypool or be forced to go with him before round 3. I think him in round 3 would have been nice, or if all the other receivers were off the board at that point that I really would have liked to look into, okay, maybe you go Chase Claypool, because it's just not my style as much. The guy I really wanted was Mims, and you could check back on the Instagram post, Matt O'Leary NY, I put it up, that the New York Jets, maybe they'll move up for him. I said, maybe if you're Joe Douglas, with all the picks you have, do you think about moving up to get somebody in Denzel Mims, who is a receiver that many like myself and thought he would go somewhere in the 20s. He did not. So we get to 48, or right before 48, and Joe Douglas moves back with Seattle. And I'm thinking, how the heck can you move back with Denzel Mims on the board? This guy isn't supposed to be here. You're going to move back when you could have the potential to draft a wide receiver of his caliber? I didn't get it at all. I really did not. They moved back. We got 11 more picks to go. So we're watching, we're waiting. And maybe at this point is when Claypool went. It probably was after the trade back. But 11 picks later, guess who is still on the board? Denzel Mims. And they make the pick. They go through with the pick that everyone wanted to see. Left tackle, wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. The 2 biggest needs taken care of. And Denzel Mims, I understand some people are concerned that he fell that far to 59. I am not. He has the size and the speed. He's 6'3", and he runs a 4.3 40-yard dash. They love speed. That's why they were linked to Henry Ruggs earlier. I think Ruggs at 11 would have been a wrong pick. I think Ruggs at 12 was the wrong pick with Judy and CeeDee Lamb on the board, but that's a story for another day. I really, really like the value of Mims at 59, so I think that was great. The first third rounder specifically, is I went, huh? So they took Ashton Davis, who's a safety out of Cal. And when you hear safety in round 3, you're going, that's a little weird. But Davis is more than just your average safety. He, and I'm quoting him at this point, has played corner, nickel corner, inside linebacker, free safety, and strong safety. So this guy can play all over the defense. He's a big physical guy. I think Greg Williams is going to love him. And maybe if you don't re-sign Marcus May, he is your replacement. I don't think he's a Jamal Adams replacement. I don't think he's as good as in coverage as what Jamal Adams is. He could be your potential replacement for Marcus May, or maybe in just these different packages, they are going to want to utilize him a little bit. So that's not my favorite pick of the draft. I didn't hate it as much as I initially did. When you see safety come on the board, I was a little bit worried. I did like, however, though, Jabari Zuniga taken in the 3rd round with the second, 3rd round pick out of Florida, edge rusher. I think he has flashed, and that is someone who I've seen his name a lot in the third round. Anai was still on the board. Weaver was still on the board, but I liked Zuniga there. I think that was a nice pick, and I'm happy with that swing at a position of need. Edge is definitely something, and no, I'm not worried that he's an edge from Florida in the third round, a.k.a. Ja'Kai Polite. He's a high character guy, and that is something the New York Jets tackled in this draft. They took 5 captains in a row on day 3. They went absolutely banana land with drafting captains. And we're going to get into those guys right now. So in the 4th round, Lamichael Pirine, he is a running back from Florida, back-to-back picks from Florida. And he looks like your prototypical running back too. Looks like a replacement for Bilal Powell. Has the same running style, physical back. Can catch out of the backfield as well. Just a little bit bigger. He's 5'11", I believe. I like this pick. You're going to need a second running back in here. Ty Montgomery, they just didn't utilize properly. Pirine is a great guy off the field too. Everybody loves him. Smart guy. And I think that he is someone who's going to be your RB2 behind Bell. And maybe the Jets don't bring Bell back. I don't think he's ever going to get to the point where he's a lead back. But I think as a complimentary back, finding one in the 4th round is good value. I've said it a million times on this show, other shows, anytime I could speak into a microphone. Running backs in the mid rounds is where you want to go. You don't necessarily need to use a 1st or a 2nd round pick on a running back. To me, you can find your guys and get pretty good value in rounds 3 and round 4 especially. That's usually the wheelhouse I like to go. I'm not someone who sits here and say, oh, draft a running back in the 6th round, plug him in, and you're fine. I think that you could find some talent in the 4th round, and if you get a running back too who could last as long as like what Bilal did, you keep in mind, he was on the team from 2011 to 2019. That's a long run for a running back. Extremely underrated. Unfortunately, I don't think they bring Bilal back just with how this everything fell. He's still available. Maybe they bring him back on a 1-year cheap deal, but that's just me. This next pick in the 4th round, because now they had 3 4th rounders from moving back, I still don't like this pick. This was my least favorite pick of the draft by far, and that's James Morgan, quarterback out of FIU. Why you're taking a developmental quarterback in the 4th round is beyond me. I understand that Joe Douglas came out and said we know how important the backup role is. If that's truly the case, then go sign Matt Moore to cheap money. He worked with Adam Gase, number 1. Number 2, he's had success in Miami and Kansas City. He can play in the NFL. This guy Morgan, I'm not sure he could play in the NFL. He had a 58 completion percentage. He's not someone that could come in and play right away. Like if, God forbid, Sam goes down early, you really want to turn the keys over to this kid? I absolutely want no part of that. No sirree, Bob. I don't think this is a smart pick for the New York Jets. I would have rather them go the veteran route for the backup quarterback. I understand some people are trying to sell me on that you could just keep him and maybe he becomes a trade chip. I think with the needs and with how the board was, I would have went with either edge. I would have went with a corner potentially. One of the corners that I wanted them to go, Bryce Hall, we'll talk about in a little bit. Or maybe someone like a Weaver in that spot for edge. Just not really a big fan of that pick whatsoever. That was my least favorite one by far. Next up was Cameron Clark. He is an offensive tackle who is probably going to transition to guard at the next level. Small school guy, but when he played against Clemson, he put on an absolute clinic. He is not someone who's going to have to come in and play from day one. He could be a developmental depth pick. Bulk up on that offensive line. Count me in. I am all over picks on the offensive line. In the 4th round makes a ton of sense. In round 5 might be the steal of the draft in Bryce Hall for the New York Jets. He's someone who some people had him go in the 2nd round, some people 3rd or 4th. No one had him as far as the 5th round. He was on the board. The Jets scoop him up. He was someone that I mocked to the Jets in the 3rd round many a times, and I like him. He is a big outside corner, can be physical, converted wide receiver. I think he is probably going to be like 5, maybe 6 corners down on the depth chart for this year. But long term, I think eventually he could be a starting corner in the NFL. That is not something out of the realm of possibilities. In the 6th round, they had 2 selections. The first, they traded the 2nd one, spoiler alert. But the first and only 6th round was Braden Mann. And punter, really, I'm not a huge fan of drafting punters usually, but the more and more I read about this guy, the more and more I fall in love with Braden Mann. He is going to replace Lachlan Edwards, and he has an absolute boot for Texas A&M. He can kick the ball. I think 54% of his punts went over 50 yards. His average was right around 49. And an NFL.com article said that he projects to be a top 5 punter in the NFL, or at least has that potential. I'm not saying he's going to come in and from day one be that, but if you can have an elite punter who flips field position in the first 6-round pick, I guess I'll take that. Traded pick 211 for Quincy Wilson. He's a big cornerback from the Indianapolis Colts, was a 2017 second rounder, was okay in 2017, pretty good in 2018, had a few starts, was terrible this year, banged up though, and never really got off on the right foot. So you take a 6th rounder and you give him away and bring in a big physical guy in Quincy Wilson. I like the swing. Again, you're not going to have to play him, hopefully, but it just adds depth to a position in need. I think the Jets did a really good job of adding depth to this roster in positions of need. Maybe not so much at the wide receiver position. I know you added a 1 or 2 undrafted free agents. The Jets would also add corner Lamar Jackson in undrafted free agency. I like him a lot. He was someone who I thought could have gone in like the 5th round, 6th round. And I think overall, which now we can get into the grade or what I would give Joe Douglas, I think he was very good, above average. So I'm going to put him at a B+. I think that's a very nice grade for Joe Douglas in his first draft. My biggest critiques were probably the Davis pick. Not the biggest fan in that spot. It's okay. And definitely not a fan of the Morgan pick. I like that he moved back. He traded 3 times. The Mims thing was masterful. The first round pick showed faith in his scouting department and himself and going with Mekhi Becton. All in all, I think you have to be extremely happy if you're the New York Jets and Joe Douglas with how your first draft class worked out. All right, let's get into the phone calls now. We will answer your draft questions and everything else. First up, we're going to go to Logan, who wants to talk about the AFC East. So let's hear from Logan.
Hey, Matt. This is Logan from Connecticut. And I just had a quick question of, since the AFC East is looking a little bit more competitive this year with Tom Brady leaving. I know Belichick's still there, but still. I was wondering, if you are a betting man,
I am.
Which team would you put your money on to have the most success in the next 5 years in the AFC East? Thanks. Go Jets.
Okay, so if we're talking next 5 years, I'm probably picking the Jets, and I know that's a homer pick. But let me explain. Okay, so we'll start with in the now. I think the team that makes the most sense is the Buffalo Bills. I like their roster and I like their coach, but I don't like their quarterback very much. I don't like Josh Allen. I don't think he's someone who can get them over the hump. I think their ceiling's like a 10-6 team who's a first-round exit. I like some of the things the Dolphins did, but Tua's injury concerns are definitely there. Until he proves otherwise, I can't go with the Dolphins yet. I thought they reached with a couple of their picks. They had a ton of picks, so maybe this roster really turns over, but I don't think they are quite ready yet. Maybe, if this question's asked in 2-3 years from now, I'd have a different answer. But the reason why I say the Jets is because I trust their GM the most. And even though I dislike their coach the most, I don't think he will be here in 2021. And I like their quarterback the best. I think Sam Darnold is the best quarterback in this division now. And when you have the best quarterback in your division, you have a chance to win it every single year. So while this year might be rough, I think that with 2021 and 2022, the New York Jets could be looking to compete. And I think the ceiling of the quarterbacks, I would probably put the highest ceiling on Sam Darnold. While Bill Belichick is still probably good enough to get this Patriots team with the roster right now in this year to 8-8, I don't know what their plan is at the quarterback position for the long haul, so it's hard to say then. But I would argue that over the next 5 years, I'm most confident in the Jets, which is weird because right now I'm not super confident in the team. They have a really hard schedule in 2020. Like I said, I dislike their coach a bunch. So maybe not in year 1, but if by year 5, probably a different story. So I'll say the Jets. Next up is Jeffrey from New Jersey, and he wants to know if the Pats are tanking for Trevor Lawrence.
Hey, Matt, this is Jeffrey from New Jersey. I love your show, and thank you guys for all you do. You, Matt, Gangrene David, and Green Bean. But I have a question regarding the Patriots. Now, given the Patriots draft, which I don't think was really good, do you think they are trying to get Trevor Lawrence for next year? Also, do you think if they have a poor 2020 season, could you potentially see Bill Belichick retire? Thank you. Have a good day.
So I'll answer the Belichick part first. I really think he wants to prove that he could win without Tom Brady, so I think he's going to stick it out even if they struggle this year. I don't think, I just kind of said it, but I don't think they're bad enough to really bottom out. I think he could still, even with Jared Stidham, who I don't think is very good, get that team to 7, 8, 9 wins, somewhere in that range. I mean, the roster is still pretty good without it. I didn't like their draft all that much, but it's still the New England Patriots, so I think they'll find a way to 8 wins. If they want Trevor Lawrence, they're going to have to move up for him. Are they going to have the draft capital to do so? Not exactly sure, but I don't project this team to be picking in the top 5. So if that eases your tensions a little bit, I guess that's a good thing. Next up is Calvin, and he wants to talk about Yannick Ngakoue.
Hey, Matt. It's Kelvin calling from Queens, New York. Being that the draft is, wrapped up and we get a chance to really kind of see where our team is, and being that we, pretty much took care of the cornerback, the defensive side of the ball, and the cornerback side. My question is, would you be interested, if you were the GM, Yannick Ngakoue is still out there on the trade block. Would you trade a next year's second-round pick? I don't believe they could get a first round because nobody offered that to the Jaguars for Yannick Ngakoue. Because that seems like that's the only position that we would possibly need to address, that is left to address on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, so would you pull the trigger on that if you were the GM? And thanks for taking my question, and go Jets.
100%. I think you hit it on the head. I think that talent-wise, he's worth a first-rounder, but that whole situation just went real south real fast. He's young. He's 25 years old. He's a premier edge rusher. I would be comfortable with paying him upwards $15 to $20 million a year. I know that's a ton of money, but I think that makes sense. I would give up a second-rounder for him for sure. I really think that's the one thing this defense is lacking, is a real edge presence. I know you brought that in the draft in the 3rd round, but Ngakoue, oh man, I would be all over that for a 2nd round pick. If you could tell me you can get him for a 2021 2nd round pick straight up, I'm doing that in a second. I would sign up for that in a second, Calvin. I'm with you. He's a really talented dude. He's someone who could fight for double-digit sacks every single year. Speed off the edge, I like it a lot. Parker from Long Beach is up next, and he wants to talk a little Antonio Brown.
Hey, it's Parker from Long Beach, Allen. I was just wondering, since we didn't take the second wide receiver in the draft, would you be open to signing Antonio Brown? Thanks. Have a good one.
Absolutely not. No, I want no part of Antonio Brown. Talented dude, but the guy's a head case. He is a legit nut job, and I want no part of him. Joe Douglas has done a really good job of identifying the kind of player that he wants. If you look at this draft class, he took 5 captains. He wants leaders. Antonio Brown is not a leader. I think that they are comfortable with rolling out Perriman and Mims on the outside with Crowder in the slot. Maybe they add a veteran depth guy. You have guys like Doxson who could be your 4th receiver. Berrios, I don't like a lot. Vincent Smith, maybe. But I think if you're relying on him right away, that's probably a stretch. If he's like your 5th or 6th guy on the depth chart, that's one thing. I would have liked to see them draft 2 receivers. I really would have, but maybe they sign a veteran guy off the scrap heap. Someone, could break free in the next few weeks and before training camp gets started. But no, I really don't want any part of Antonio Brown. Next up is Frank from New York, and he wants to talk about drafting receivers.
Hey, Matt, how you doing? This is Frank calling from New York. I just had a question. Do you think instead of taking a wide receiver running back with that pick, they should have double dipped wide receiver and then maybe package the other 2 third-round picks for the disgruntled edge rusher from Jacksonville? I forget his name. Thanks a lot, Matt. Let's go Jets. Talk to you soon.
All right, so he's talking about moving a couple of picks for Yannick Ngakoue and taking a receiver. Listen, I would have taken a receiver in the 4th round, like Antonio Gandy Golden, over the quarterback that they took out of FIU. I would have went receiver there. I don't hate the edge rusher pick, and I don't mind the P. Ryan pick in the 4th round. I really don't. I think my gripe is with the quarterback pick in round 4, maybe the safety in round 3, but I'm not super upset over that one super much. Next is Travis from Ohio, and always good to hear from him. So let's hear from Travis.
Hey, Matt. It's Travis from Ohio. Hey, buddy. Loved your coverage of the draft. I was watching all of it while watching the actual draft, and watching you guys all react in real time was awesome. So hopefully you guys can do it every year, not just one where we're all stuck inside. So
I hope so.
Anyway, love our first 4 picks. Love them. Every one of them. Off the charts. Love the 3 trades that we did where we traded back, and then we got Quincy Wilson for corner depth. And I've been looking up our and I love the Mann pick, Braden Mann. That's a heck of a punter right there. Anyway, I've been looking up our undrafted free agent signings, and I've noticed even those guys have been team captains. So I love the character and the talent that Douglas is bringing in. I love him filling the needs. I love the value. I think we actually have a GM, unlike McCagnon and Ed Zick, or Idiot, as I always called him, that knows his stuff. And just want to hear your thoughts again, if you haven't already addressed it. And go Jets. Stay healthy, brother. Love ya. Bye.
Love you too, buddy. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it. Joe Douglas, I think, did a really, really good job. Like I said, I gave him a B+ grade, which is good. That's an above average grade. I'd say he had one of the 10 best drafts in the NFL. I would say top 5 might be a stretch, but somewhere between 5 and 10, I would put him in. I thought he did a really nice job. I agree. He's going for high character guys. And I think he has a plan. Mike McCagnon never really had a plan. You could tell because how many interior defensive linemen did the man take? He really just went with who he thought was the best player on the board no matter what. And he didn't really move around all that much. I am really happy with them leaning on the offensive side of the ball. There's a huge need. They got a punter in the 6th round who they really like. I, again, wasn't a huge fan at the time of maybe going punter in that spot with some receivers who were there, but at the end of the day here, I think you got to be pretty happy if you're the New York Jets and a Jets fan. We are here on the Monday after a draft, and we are in pretty good shape on April 27th, talking about Joe Douglas and the future of the New York Jets being in competent hands, which is a little bizarre. Just got to get that coach out of here. Next up is Carson, and he wants to talk about some late-round picks.
Hey, Matt, this is Carson from Long Island. So I have more of like a statement than a question or something maybe you should give your opinion on. I'm satisfied with our first 2 picks with Mims and Becton. I thought they were home runs. But in regards to the latter part of the draft, day 3, and so on and so forth. I'm a big guy in, undrafted free agency and day 3. I love getting steals and good value picks on day 3. What is your take on us not taking Curtis Weaver or like a Bradley Anae or something like that? And my other question is, are you excited about Bryce Hall, who's a long, lengthy corner who has first-round potential? By some scouts, they said he was in the first round, but his injuries really derailed his 2019 season. And are you happy with the Quincy Wilson pickup for our 6th round? And also, our undrafted signing of Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson had a grade of a 2nd-round potential on him, and we got him as an undrafted free agent. So how do you feel about the corner situation now and our edge position? Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I think they did a really, really nice job, and thank you for the question, in acquiring talent at the cornerback position. So you really brought in 3, borderline 4 names. The safety, I guess he plays a little bit all over the place. But Bryce Hall in the 5th was an absolute steal. He was someone who I thought could have went in the 3rd round. Maybe some guys even had him in the 2nd. Lamar Jackson, signing him as an undrafted free agent, that's just another guy to add depth into the room. And trading for Wilson, I mean, the guy was the second round pick just 3 years ago. I know it didn't work out towards the end in Indy, but he is someone who I would feel comfortable as a spot starter. And guys go down. Like, you can't expect everyone to stay healthy. Like, it's just not going to happen. Bless Austin, as talented as he may be, and as good of a find that might be in the 6th round, the guy can't stay on the field. So you need depth behind there, and the Jets seem to have that now. Edge is still a little bit on the weaker side. I would prefer to get a guy like Weaver or Anai in the 4th round instead of the quarterback. Again, the main gripe I have with that pick is you could have filled other needs, or at least taken swings at other needs outside of the quarterback position. I know the argument is that you need a good backup. I agree with that. I don't know if I would classify this guy as a good backup just yet. He's from a small conference school with a 58 completion percentage. He's a big guy with a big arm but has no accuracy. I don't think he's going to be able to step up and play in the NFL this year if something happened, God forbid, to Sam Darnold. Matt Moore, on the other hand, Joe Flacco, on the other hand, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable stepping in for a couple of games, for sure. So thank you so much for the question, Carson. We're going to round things out with Rob from Seattle, who just wants to talk about the draft.
Hey, this is Rob from Seattle. My question is, which player from this draft class will make the Pro Bowl first? My guess would be Braden Mann, but want to hear your opinion on it. Also, super excited about what Joe Douglas did in this draft. Feeling good about the Jets this season. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the chalk answer here and go Mekhi Becton. Just because I think his ceiling is the highest. I like Mims a ton, don't get me wrong. But Becton's someone with his size who can just be an absolute dominant force as a left tackle. Like, I could definitely see him being a Pro Bowler a couple years from now. Mims, there's maybe potential for that to be there eventually. I don't know if I'd be willing to bet that he's going to be more than a wide receiver 2 just yet. I think there's a potential for him to be like a 1,000-yard receiver. Pro Bowler, though, I don't know if I'd put him in the top, how many receivers make the Pro Bowl from each conference. I don't know if I'd be able to put him up that high just yet. 3rd rounders, I would say probably just role players. 4th round, no. Perrine is going to be a depth player. The quarterback, I would say no. Bryce Hall, he's someone who I think could start. Yeah, I'm going to say probably Mekhi Becton is going to have the best chance of becoming a Pro Bowler. I would think him, the steal or the best players from this draft class in my eyes are going to be Becton, Mims, and Mann, the punter. I think you get depth from Perrine. The offensive lineman, Clark, I think you get depth from. And everyone else is pretty much just a depth player. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Hopefully you were pretty excited about the Jets draft. I think you should be. I think Joe Douglas did a lot to get you excited. And this week is just going to be a ton of fun. Announcement time. I wanted to hold you on. You got to wait to the end. If you wait to the end of the show, you're going to be pleased with my announcement. So, there's no sports. The NFL draft was the last thing we really had looking forward to us. But a lot of people have been rewatching games and stuff like that. So what I want to have with you guys is a live rewatch. So what we're going to do on Saturday night, I'm going to be streaming me rewatching the New York Jets versus the New England Patriots from the 2010 playoffs. What I will do is I will have my face on the screen, I'll have a scoreboard on the screen, and I'll have a timer on the screen. And the timer is going to represent where you should be in the video. I'll link the video of the game. It's on YouTube in full below in the description so that you can click on it and you can watch along with me. We react and we'll talk in the chat and all stuff like that. It'll be a ton of fun. I think it'll be something worthwhile to do. I'm hoping to do a couple of these as the offseason goes on and there's not as much to talk about. But yeah, come hang out with me on Saturday night. We'll watch a little bit of Jets Patriots and have some fun. Thank you so much for tuning in today to Just Jets, episode number 11. I am Matt O'Leary. Make sure to subscribe if you're new here, and I'll talk to you next time.